So it says, when your mothers, who've loved you since time without beginning, are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this verse is about bodhicitta. And the previous verse, number 9, was about renunciation. And there's an important connection between renunciation and bodhicitta, because it's said in the teachings that before we can really develop bodhicitta, we have to first develop renunciation, the determination to be free. Because if we can't even see that we ourselves are in a disadvantageous situation, a problematic, suffering situation, being in samsara, and see all its faults and want to free ourselves from this situation, how can we feel that way towards others? So renunciation is that wish to be free of our suffering and causes of suffering, to get ourselves out of this situation. And then we open up our hearts and extend that same feeling towards everybody else. Okay? So we have to have it first for ourselves before we can really feel it for others. So I'm saying that because there may be some people who feel really attracted to the meditations on love and compassion and bodhicitta. They're sort of very beautiful and very inspiring. But when it comes to the meditations involved in developing renunciation, meditating on suffering, all the different kinds of suffering, list after list of suffering, and then, the faults of our body, the unattractiveness of the body, our own body, the bodies of others, and the faults of pleasures, sensory pleasures. Some people feel resistance to those meditations. They don't really want to do that. They like to skip over those and just go straight into love and compassion. But would that work? If we cannot see the faults of samsara with regard to ourself, our own samsara, the samsara of others, then will we really be able to generate bodhicitta? Also, another thing is this topic of renunciation could also be called self-compassion. This is something I've wondered about for a long time because, when Buddhism talks about compassion, traditionally it's all about others, having compassion for others. They never mention compassion for oneself. And then I thought, but actually renunciation, the determination to be free from suffering, is compassion for oneself. It fits the definition, because compassion means the wish for someone to be free of suffering. So that's what we're doing when we generate renunciation. We wish ourselves to be free of suffering. And it's the highest form of self-compassion, because it's not just about the suffering of this life or today or this moment, but it's the whole situation of samsara that we are in and the causes of it as well. So I think Venerable Children came to the same conclusion. I read it in one of her books. So even though traditionally they don't use the term self-compassion, I think we could use that term. I think it does fit that definition. And if we think of renunciation as self-compassion, maybe it would be more inviting. Maybe we would feel more interested in generating that state of mind. Okay, so in this verse then, the author is talking about this whole idea of sentient beings having been our mothers, which I'm sure you've all heard about. And I think it's a difficult topic. A lot of Westerners have difficulty with this topic, but I've heard Tibetans have difficulty with it as well. I've heard it's one of the most difficult meditations alongside emptiness. So it's not easy to really get that every sentient being has been our mother. And I've had difficulty with it. And also I used to wonder if the Buddha really said this or if the Tibetans just made it up, because I didn't come across it in any other tradition of Buddhism. They don't talk about it in Theravada Buddhism or in Zen Buddhism. So I thought, well, maybe Tibetans just made it up. But then I found some clues in a couple of books, and I traced those, and with the help of Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's very, very knowledgeable about all the Pali sutras, I managed to find the original quotation from the Buddha. So it's a sutta called the Mata Sutra. I think Mata means mother. In the Samyutta Nikaya. So here's the quotation. In Sravasti, this is where it happened. There the Blessed One said, "From an inconstruable beginning comes transmigration. A beginning point is not evident. Though beings hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving are transmigrating and wandering on. A being who has not been your mother at one time in the past is not easy to find. A being who has not been your father at one time in the past is not easy to find." And then it goes on with brother, sister, son, daughter. Okay, so the Buddha is saying, I am not able to see a being who hasn't been your mother or your father, and so on and so forth. So it was really helpful for me to see the evidence. Oh, Buddha really did say that. That helped me to be more confident in this idea. But it's still difficult. It's still difficult to really get it. And I think that's only natural because, we can't remember, most of us can't remember our past lives and can't see the connections between ourselves and others. And we can do that one day, even before enlightenment, with high realizations. It is possible to remember past lives and to see that connection between ourselves and others. So in the meantime, we just have to take Buddha's word for it. But I also, I ask myself, well, can I be absolutely sure that this person was not my mother? And I can't. I can't be 100% sure. So that means there is a possibility. It's possible that Jampa was my mother. I can't prove that she wasn't. And also, it's such a beautiful idea, even if I'm not 100% convinced. It's a really beautiful idea to think about. The other day, Mudita jumped on my lap and was obviously begging for attention and affection and so on. And I thought, okay, you've been my mother. In past lives, you held me on your lap, and you gave me lots of care and affection and attention, and you fed me, and you changed my dirty diapers and all that kind of thing. So now I can repay that kindness. I can give you some kindness in return. So it made me really happy. I'm always happy to pet kitties anyway. It's not too difficult. But it just added a different dimension to it, instead of, oh, I like this, but she deserves it. She did this to me. So it's a beautiful idea just to contemplate and think, well, maybe it's true. Although it's not too difficult to do that with a cute pussycat, but when it comes to something like a cockroach or a slug or an annoying person, it's a little more challenging. But even if we just say to ourselves, maybe this person has been my mother. Buddha said this person has been my mother. So just considering that possibility shifts the mind. It kind of makes your mind more soft. And even if you don't want to take them on your lap and pet them, but at least to feel, well, I shouldn't do anything harmful to this person. I should at least try to be nice to them and not harmful. Another challenging point that some people have with this idea is if you didn't have a nice mother, which does happen, sometimes mothers are not loving and kind, and they could even be really horrible and abusive. So if that's the case, then it could be helpful to think of somebody other than your mother. Hopefully there was somebody in your life that did give you that kind of care and attention and kindness. Okay, so you could use that person. Or you could use somebody else's mother. If you observed a mother who's very loving and kind, and you could think, okay, that's what a good mother is like. And everybody has shown that kindness to me. And then this verse is saying, okay, so if we can accept, at least tentatively, that everybody's been our mother, everybody's been kind to us, then would it be right for us to just get ourselves out of suffering, get ourselves to liberation, peace, nirvana, and enjoy ourselves and leave all of them behind? That would be like if you're inside of a burning building and you manage to find a way out, and then you just walk away and leave behind other people, especially if it's your mother, live in that building and not do anything to help her. So if you feel, that wouldn't be right to do, which is what the author is saying here, how can we only be concerned for our own happiness, our own peace, our own liberation, and leave behind our mothers? Then the solution is to work on cultivating bodhicitta, the altruistic intention, and follow the bodhisattva's path. And it's difficult, of course. Bodhicitta is a very high state of mind. But even to just try to do that, even to just think that would be a nice thing to do, I would like to develop bodhicitta, and then try to do it, even if it's just in a contrived way. Fake it till you make it, like they say. Just, I am doing this for the benefit of all sentient beings. I want to become a Buddha to help all sentient beings. You're just saying that to oneself, even if it's not uncontrived, spontaneous, you're not a real bodhisattva. But just slowly, slowly making the mind familiar with that, it starts to become more natural, more spontaneous. Okay, so we'll be looking at more about generating bodhicitta and practicing it in the coming verses. So thank you.